Welcome back to Turkish Series Stars, the channel where emotions, stories, and truth intertwine. If you're someone who believes that love, despite heartbreak, can still shine through kindness, then you're in the right place. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, tap that join button if you'd like to support our growing family, and drop a like if you believe love can still heal even the deepest wounds. Now, let's step into the tender world of Yaman, a man whose heartache didn't dim his grace, but rather illuminated the beauty of sincerity. The cameras had just stopped rolling. The echoes of the commercial set were fading when Can, with that familiar calm confidence, faced the waiting microphones. His eyes, though a little tired, carried a serenity that only comes after walking through the storm. Recently, the charismatic actor has been under the spotlight not because of a new role, but due to the quiet sadness surrounding his breakup. Yet, instead of bitterness or withdrawal, he offered something the world rarely sees anymore: compassion, gratitude, and admiration, not for himself, but for someone who shared a chapter of his life that millions still cherish. As journalists gathered, one question pierced the silence: "Can, how is your heart these days?" He paused for a moment, looked down, and answered softly, "Sometimes the heart just needs time to understand what it lived. Healing isn't a race." The words landed softly, and a hush rippled across the crowded press area. But what truly moved everyone that day wasn't what he said about his own pain, it was what he said next about Demet Özdemir and the connection that began years ago, on a set that changed both of their lives. "Demet and I built something honest when the cameras were on," Can said, his tone steady yet deeply heartfelt. "There's a truth in the way we looked at each other back then, a rhythm that wasn't rehearsed. What started at work didn't stay there. It turned into real care, real respect. I'm grateful for that." His voice wasn't nostalgic for attention, it was reflective, almost protective of a memory the public had turned into legend. He didn't name the rumors, didn't feed the noise. He simply honored what existed and what remains, a bond, even if transformed. Those words spread across the internet like wildfire. Within hours, fans flooded social media platforms, praising not only his kindness but also his rare emotional maturity. Comments such as "He's a gentleman," "a man who admires instead of resents," and "Can reminds us that empathy still exists in show business," quickly surfaced among top trending phrases of the day. Even those who usually scroll past celebrity tidbits paused to listen. His sincerity cut through the usual chatter and scene-stealing headlines, turning what could have been another glossy interview into a quiet lesson about grace. Before we continue, if stories of emotional depth and human connection move you as much as they move us, don't forget to hit subscribe to Turkish Series Stars. Your likes, your comments, and your support keep these heartfelt stories alive. Now, let's return to the man who proved that heartbreak doesn't harden the heart, it softens it. According to those close to him, Can has been going through a reflective period. He spends time alone, keeping a low profile, but friends say that solitude has not made him distant, it has made him gentler. He reportedly told them, "When you've known genuine love, you don't stop believing in it. You start recognizing it in other people's eyes. It becomes easier to feel happy for them." This perspective shone through during his interview. When he spoke of Demet, it wasn't the voice of a man haunted by jealousy or regret, it was the voice of someone who had looked love in the eye, lost what it was, and still believed in the beauty it taught him. "When you love someone," he continued, "you learn faith, not only in your own story, but in the idea that love leaves you better than it found you. When I see old scenes, or photos of us laughing between takes, I feel warmth, not ache. Those aren't performances. That's a real connection that shaped who we are." The lines felt almost like a poem someone finds in a drawer and reads in secret. The internet answered in kind. Fans shared clips of his interview over and over again, writing, "He doesn't speak, he feels, and we feel with him," and "His words sound like they were scripted for a drama, but they came from a real man's heart." Tabloid headlines the next day read, "The gentleman who turned heartbreak into grace. Can Yaman's manifesto of love." Even journalists, often quick to chase flashier stories, described the actor as a man whose eyes carry both pain and hope. One reporter noted that when he paused for a few seconds after speaking, gaze drifting as if to the horizon, it felt like he was revisiting his own memories, but this time, with calm instead of chaos. What makes this moment so special isn't merely his praise for a connection that defined an era of television romance, it's the quiet revolution behind it. In an industry often driven by rivalry, envy, and the need to stay louder than the person next to you, Ken chose tenderness. He reminded us that kindness doesn't make a person weak, it makes them timeless. Behind the cameras, sources reveal that he has been rediscovering himself. Friends say he's reading more, writing again, and taking long walks by the sea when schedules allow. He speaks of love now not as something to possess, but as something to understand and honor. That's perhaps why his words about Demet felt so genuine, they were reflections of his own rebirth. He doesn't erase what was. He reframes it, choosing to see a shared past as a lesson in tenderness rather than a battlefield of what-ifs. When Demet Özdemir learned about his remarks, her response was equally heartfelt. Through close friends, she expressed her gratitude, saying she was touched by Can's grace and by the way he chose to speak about a shared chapter with dignity. Later, she quietly echoed that sentiment online, liking a clip of the interview and adding a brief note through her circle, "Some stories leave you with gratitude. I'm thankful." The gesture, subtle yet unmistakably warm, completed the circle. In a world where statements often sound rehearsed, this exchange of genuine respect felt refreshing, almost cinematic in its purity. And it didn't end there. Later that evening, Ken shared a short message on his own account, not to stir the pot, but to close it gently. "I meant every word. Respect is forever." It wasn't a grand declaration, it was a soft landing for a conversation that could have spiraled into noise, but didn't. Fans breathed out in collective relief. For once, an emotional story in the spotlight wasn't a fight, a detail leaked, or a cryptic jab, it was two people choosing to remember with kindness. What about you, dear viewers? Do you believe that heartbreak can lead to deeper compassion? Have you ever admired someone else's love story even while healing your own heart? Share your thoughts in the comments, we'd love to hear your perspective. And while you're here, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and if you wish to go the extra mile, tap the join button to support Turkish series stars. Because your presence keeps this space of honesty and warmth alive. As the day of the interview ended, Ken turned to leave, but before walking away, he looked at the crowd and said softly, "Never stop believing in love. Sometimes hearts break, but love always endures." Those words became headlines the next morning, quoted, shared, and cherished. They weren't just the reflection of a celebrity's private pain, they carried a universal truth. Every now and then, a moment appears that reminds us what humanity still looks like, raw, tender, and real. Ken gave us that moment. What followed in the days after was a ripple of quiet change. Comment sections, often arenas of speculation, took a different tone. People shared their own stories, of a first love that turned into a lifelong friendship, of a breakup that taught them to be kinder, of watching old scenes of Can and Demet and feeling not just nostalgia, but gratitude that two young artists navigated fame, feeling, and expectation with surprising maturity. One fan wrote, "I used to ship them like a fairy tale. Now I admire them like two people who showed us how to respect a past love." Another added, "It's rare to see exes lift each other up without qualifiers. That's the bar now." Insiders say that after the interview, Ken stayed at the set a little longer than usual. He thanked the crew, joked with a lighting technician about a finicky angle, and promised to send coffee to the team next week. Small acts, but revealing. A person rebuilding is often a person who notices the hands that hold the world steady. Later that night, he was seen at a quiet seaside cafe, no entourage, just a notebook and a long look at the horizon. A witness claimed he smiled at nothing in particular, the kind of smile that suggests a page has turned without fanfare. Demet, for her part, continued with her projects, elegantly avoiding any attempt to drag her into a he-said-she-said spiral. Those close to her shared that she appreciated the calm in the air, the lack of fireworks. "It's nice when kindness is the headline," she reportedly said. "It is not lost on anyone that both have grown, not away from who they were, but into fuller versions of themselves. The public feeling toward them has softened too. The fevered whisper of 'are they, aren't they' has been replaced by a warmer narrative, 'they were, and it mattered.' This is the quiet revolution the industry rarely showcases. Instead of rivalry, you get reverence. Instead of performative honesty, you get the kind that doesn't need caps lock to sound true. And maybe that's why the internet, famously impatient with nuance, gave this story room to breathe. For once, the clicks didn't come from shock, they came from recognition, from people seeing a reflection of their own complicated, beautiful histories. By the weekend, a popular magazine ran a cover story not about scandal, but about emotional intelligence in the spotlight, using Cannes' interview as its anchor. Analysts discussed the cultural shift toward gentler masculinity, toward language that names feeling without flinching. On morning shows, anchors replayed the clip where he said, "Respect is forever," and nodded like they, too, had learned something worth keeping. And somewhere between scripted segments and the chaos of daily headlines, a new phrase entered the fandom lexicon, the soft truth. It meant telling the story without wounding it. For those who followed Can and Demet from their earliest days on set, those laughter-filled behind-the-scenes clips, the long rehearsal hours that turned into playful banter, the stolen moments that looked a lot like real life, this felt like closure without a slammed door. It felt like the kind of ending that still lets light in. A reminder that the greatest proof of love's power isn't always in staying together, sometimes it's in how gently two people step apart. As this chapter settles, one image remains, a man on a set, pausing long enough to choose grace over noise, a woman hearing his words and responding with quiet gratitude. Between them stretches a past that neither of them denies and a future they refuse to darken. Maybe that's what growing up in front of cameras looks like at its best, not perfect, but honest. So, dear friends, if this touched your heart, remember. On Turkish series Stars, we don't just talk about fame, we explore the emotions behind it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tap the join button if you want to support our community of heartfelt storytelling. Until next time, keep believing, keep feeling, and above all, keep loving. This is Turkish series Stars, signing off with gratitude and warmth.